You ever hear a story so raw, so quiet? It feels like it was buried in the dirt for 100 years, just waiting to be found? This ain't one of those flashy, polished legends with heroes in white hats. Nah, what I'm about to tell you is a story born in the harshest corners of history. A tale of survival, sacrifice, and a love that grew like a stubborn weed in dry soil. Picture this: Texas, 1870. A border livestock market baking under the unforgiving sun. Wooden pens creaking under the weight of cattle and hogs, but off to the side, where the shadows stretch long and folks don't look too hard, there's another kind of pen. And inside, women, mostly immigrants, tied at the wrists and ankles, hollow-eyed from hunger and heat, left there so long they're not even for sale anymore, deemed worthless, disposable, the kind they'd clear out after sundown, quietly. And through that dust walks a man named O. Ryland. Folks call him Bo. He's tall, weathered, mid-30s, with a limp that never quite healed after the same storm that took his wife and daughter. Lost them 5 winters ago. Since then, Bo kept to himself, running cattle, outrunning ghosts. He didn't glance at the women, didn't need to. He came for horse medicine, not reminders of how ugly the world had gotten. But then, something tugged at his coat. A tiny hand. Dirty fingers. Eyes too big for a face so small. A little girl, barefoot in the dust. "You don't have to take me," she whispered. "Just take my mama." Bo turned. She couldn't have been more than 4. Her knees bruised, dress torn, her hair tangled with sweat and dirt. She pointed toward the shadows. And there, slumped against a post, was a woman, mid-20s maybe, feverish, pale beneath the dust, one eye swollen shut. Rope had rubbed her wrists raw. She wasn't moving. "That's her?" Bo asked. The girl nodded. "She hasn't eaten," she said. "I gave her my bread. All of it. 2 days." Bo crouched down, joints cracking. He met her eyes. "What's her name?" he asked. "Lena," she whispered. "She's my mama. They said if no one buys her today, they'll take her somewhere bad." He looked at Lena again, barely breathing, bound like livestock. Then he looked at the little girl, and something in her eyes, maybe hunger, maybe hope, broke through whatever walls Bo had left. He stood up, quiet, steady. He didn't say a word. He just walked toward the pen, past the dust, past the man guarding it, and pulled a small leather pouch from his coat. Dropped it on the table with a solid thud. Gold. "I'll take both," he said. The slaver raised a brow. "Both?" Bo nodded toward the child. "Girl comes too." The man looked at the coins, then back at Bo. "You just bought yourself a mess of trouble, cowboy." Bo didn't blink. "I've had worse," he said. He lifted the girl gently, her arms wrapping around his neck like she'd been there forever. Then, careful as a whisper, he cut Lena down and carried her, limp and silent, out of that pen. No one said a word as he passed. Not one. But somewhere in the silence, the little girl, Rosita, buried her face in his coat and whispered, "Thank you for taking both." Bo didn't answer. He just held them tighter. Scene shift. The ride home, the road back to Bo's ranch was long, silent. Rosita sat pressed to his side on the saddle, small hands clinging to his shirt. Lena lay across a saddle blanket behind them, strapped down gently so she wouldn't fall. still unconscious. Bo's ranch lay past the hills, tucked between cottonwoods and quiet earth. No visitors, no neighbors, just land and memory. He carried Lena inside like she weighed nothing. The old cabin still smelled of wood smoke and leather, the floor worn smooth by the feet of people long gone. He didn't hesitate. He placed her in a room painted soft blue. The one that hadn't been touched since Clara died. A wooden lamb still rested on the windowsill. A pair of shoes waited beneath the bed. On the nightstand, framed in oak, sat a photo of a smiling girl with missing teeth. Bo laid Lena on the bed like he was placing something fragile, covered her in a quilt, turned to the stove. Rosita stood at the door, eyes wide. "She's burning," she said softly. Bo nodded. "We'll fix that." He boiled water, ground up willow bark, added molasses, mixed the medicine, taught Rosita how to help. Together they worked, cleaning Lena's cuts, wrapping her bruised wrists, cooling her fevered skin. Rosita climbed onto the bed beside her mother, gently wiping her forehead, just like Bo had shown her. "Mama," she whispered. "Mama, wake up. I'm here." Bo leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, just watching. For the first time in years, that little room glowed again. Not with memory, but with something new, with care, with life. That night, Rosita curled at the foot of the bed. Bo stayed in the doorway, dozing in a chair, one hand resting on a rifle, just in case. For 2 days, Lena didn't move. Bo changed her bandages, checked her fever, kept the fire burning low. And every night, he sat by the doorway with his rifle resting across his lap, eyes scanning shadows that never seemed to move. On the third morning, something shifted. He was pressing a damp cloth to her wrist when her fingers twitched. Just a little, barely noticeable. Then a sound, low and guttural. From her throat, a groan. Her eyelids fluttered. Dark brown eyes opened, wide and sharp and afraid. Bo didn't move. "It's all right," he said, voice low. "You're safe now." But Lena didn't seem to hear. Her chest heaved, pain rippling across her bruised ribs. She tried to sit up. Too fast, and gasped as agony bloomed along her side. Bo stepped forward, but she snapped her gaze to him, wild, feral. "Where's Rosita?" she rasped, her voice no louder than sand scraping stone. Before he could answer, a blur of curls shot from the corner. "Mama!" Rosita launched herself onto the bed, arms tight around Lena's neck. The woman gasped, not from pain, but from relief. Her hands rose, shaken, and wrapped around her daughter. They held each other like nothing else in the world mattered. Bo stepped back into the hallway. He didn't say a word. Later that day, a quiet confrontation. Bo sat at the table, hands dirty, shirt rolled up at the sleeves. The same hands that had branded cattle and fixed fences now bore signs of something else. Tenderness. He stared down at them. In the room behind him, a mother and daughter whispered, and something inside Bo shifted. Not healed. Not yet, but stirring. Then it shattered. A scream. High. Sharp. From the bedroom. Bo dropped his bucket of feed and ran. Fast. Boots thudding across the porch. Heart hammering against ribs that hadn't beat that hard in years. The front door burst open, slamming back on its hinges inside. Lena stood barefoot on the wooden floor, breathing hard, hair wild. In her hand, a wooden hairbrush lifted like a dagger. "Stay away!" she screamed, her voice thick with panic. "If you come near me, I swear to God—" Bo stopped in the doorway, raised both hands, palms open. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe." But Lena didn't hear him. Or maybe she couldn't. Her whole body shook. Not from weakness, but from the storm raging deep inside her. She lunged. The brush cracked across his shoulder. Then again, and again. Not to hurt, but to feel power. To not feel powerless anymore. "You bought me," she cried, her voice breaking like glass. "You think that makes me yours? Just another piece of land to own?" Bo didn't move, didn't block the hits, didn't raise his voice. When she finally stopped, panting, brush trembling in her grip, he looked her straight in the eye and said one word. "No." Then he turned and walked out. Lena fell to her knees. The brush slipped from her fingers. Not just fear anymore. Shame, confusion, grief, all crashing down like a flood. She didn't know who to trust. Maybe never would. Moments later, a child's truth. From the hallway, a small voice whispered, "Mama." Rosita stepped into the room, barefoot, still in her nightgown. Hands fidgeted at her sides. She walked slowly toward Lena, then knelt beside her. "He sleeps on the floor," Rosita said. Lena blinked. "What?" "He never touches," Rosita whispered. "He sleeps right there." She pointed toward the far corner. A blanket and pillow folded near the door. Lena turned her head. For the first time, she noticed them. He hadn't come into the room. Not once. She had thought he didn't care. But maybe it was because he did. Evening. Something soft. Something seen. That night, Bo brought in a tray of soup. He didn't speak. Just nodded and set it down. Lena didn't speak either, but she nodded back. Rosita filled the space with stories about horses and fences and how Bo sings to himself when he thinks no one's listening. Lena laughed. A soft sound. The first real sound from her lips in days. And that night, when she turned off the lamp, she didn't lock the door. Because for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she had to. Next morning, a steady man, a question blooming, sunlight spilled across the wooden windowsill, warming the room like a promise. Lena stood quietly, watching from the window as Bo mended the eastern fence. His sleeves were rolled up, his shoulders broad, his steps careful. He didn't look at the house, didn't look toward her, just kept working. No hunger in his gaze, no claim in his stance. Just a man who said he would help and kept doing it. And for the first time in years, Lena felt something shift in her chest. Not love. Not yet. But a question. Maybe, just maybe, not all men come to take. It was just afternoon when they showed up. 3 riders. Dust trailing behind them like ghosts chasing the living. Heavy boots. Leather dusters. Rifles slung casual across their backs. Like they belonged to the land. Like no one could tell them no. At the front rode a man tall and smug. Doyle. He dismounted first. Then the other 2 followed. Bo saw them before they reached the gate. He was in the barn. Shirt rolled to his elbows, wiping grease from his hands. The second he caught sight of them, his shoulders straightened, his face didn't change. Didn't have to. He walked out, met them halfway. Doyle grinned. "Name's Doyle. We're here on business," he said, like it was his land, like he didn't smell the danger in the air. Bo said nothing. Doyle pulled out a dirty sheet of parchment. Worn, creased, stained like it had been through a dozen pockets too many. "We come to collect merchandise," he said, smirking. "Girl named Lena. Property of a Mr. Marcardo. Got papers and everything." Bo glanced at the so-called contract. Forgery. Obvious. Arrogant. Still, Doyle kept talking. "You bought time, friend, not freedom. She's still his." Bo looked toward the porch, behind the curtain. Just barely. He saw the silhouette of a woman, a smaller shadow beside her, gripping her dress. He turned back. His voice came out like iron. "Get off my land!" The second man snorted. "Or what?" Bo didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I paid gold for her," he said. "Now I'll pay blood if I have to." A fight waiting to happen. Doyle laughed. "You must think you're some kind of hero." But Bo didn't move. Didn't blink. And in that stillness, something snapped. The third man twitched. Reaching for his rifle, Bo moved first. He stepped hard on a loose rail post. A lever! And from the hollow inside fell a shotgun, slick and heavy. In one smooth motion, Bo caught it and fired. The blast cracked like thunder. The third man dropped, screaming, blood blooming from his thigh, chaos. Doyle ducked behind his horse. The second man drew fast. Fired once. Bo staggered. A shot tore across his upper arm, blood blooming into his shirt. Rosita screamed from the house. The door rattled under her fists. Bo dropped to one knee. Cock. Fire. Again. He blasted at their feet. Dust exploded. "You want the next one in your chest?" he growled. That did it. They scrambled, grabbing their wounded man, hauling him onto a saddle, blood streaking behind, and they ran. Silence after the storm. Bo stayed on one knee. Blood dripping. Breath shallow. He didn't move. Then the door burst open. Lena ran across the yard, dress billowing, falling to the dirt beside him. Her hands trembled, but she reached for his arm, tearing the fabric. "You're bleeding," she whispered. Bo grunted. "Not too bad." "You're a fool," she said, voice cracking. "You could have been killed." Bo didn't answer right away. Then, quiet as a prayer, he said, "I've been dead before. When I lost my daughter." Lena froze. She looked at him, really looked. Then she pressed a cloth to his wound, tied it as tight as she could. Bo winced. "That stings." "You deserve worse," she said, but her voice shook. She met his eyes. "You didn't have to do this." "I did," Bo said, "because no one should come to take you." Not anymore. Behind them, Rosita stood in the doorway, watching her mother kneel beside the man who had spilled blood for her. And for the first time, Lena didn't flinch when she touched him. Later that evening, blood, whiskey, and truth. The kitchen smelled of iron and boiling cloth. Bo sat shirtless at the table, sweat beading his brow. The bullet had gone clean through, but left a mess behind. Lena poured whiskey onto a cloth, then directly over the wound. Bo hissed, but stayed still. "You sure about this?" he asked. Lena nodded. "I've seen worse." Her fingers weren't steady, but they were sure. "I need to cut a little," she whispered. He nodded once. She placed a rolled cloth between his teeth. "Bite." She worked quickly. The knife sliced, shallow, precise. His skin flinched. He didn't scream, just breathed through the pain. When it was done, she wrapped the arm tight, blood-soaked linen falling to the floor. Bo leaned back, eyes closed. "You've done that before," he murmured. "I had a brother," Lena said. "Back in Sonora. He got into fights, broke bones. I used to patch him up." Bo opened his eyes. Their gazes held. Not a word passed, but something was shared. Memories in the room. Lena turned her head. On the mantel, a photo. The same little girl she'd noticed before. Bo's daughter, Clara. "She looks like Rosita," Lena said. Bo nodded. "Her name was June." "What happened?" "Fever," he said. "Took her in 3 days. My wife followed a month later." Lena's eyes fell to the space between them. She reached out. Didn't grab. Just rested her hand there. "I think she was lucky," she said. Bo frowned. "How's that?" "To be loved like that." A long pause. Then Bo laid his hand over hers. Rough. Calloused. Honest. She didn't pull away. Didn't tremble. Instead, she said softly, "You should rest." But neither of them moved. The next day dawned slow and golden. The frost had lifted early, chased away by a soft sun. Bo walked alongside the small spotted mare, one hand on the reins, the other ready to catch the tiny rider perched proudly on the saddle. Rosita. Her legs barely reached the stirrups, but she sat tall, clutching the reins like she was queen of the plains. "Easy now," Bo said gently. "Hand steady." She nodded, her curls bouncing in the breeze. "You're doing better than most grown men I know." Rosita giggled. Her smile was wide and warm. But then she went quiet. Her eyes dropped, then flicked to his face. She let go of the reins and leaned forward, small arms wrapping tight around his neck. Bo caught her, instinctively, lifting her from the saddle. She tucked her face against his shirt. And then, barely more than a whisper, she said, "Can I call you Papa now?" A moment that cracked the sky. Bo froze. Everything stopped. The wind, the rustle of the cottonwoods, even the mare turned her head, waiting. He didn't say anything. Couldn't. His throat closed. His chest ached in a way it hadn't in years. Not from pain, but from something he thought had died with Clara. So he just held her like the question didn't need an answer, held her like the answer had already been yes. Watched from a distance. Lena saw the whole thing. She had stepped out with a basket of apples, ready to call them in for supper. But when she saw Rosita's arms around Bo's neck, heard that small voice ask the impossible question, she didn't move, didn't blink. The apples slipped from her hands, falling into the grass, and Lena collapsed to her knees, right there in the dirt. Not from grief, from release. Tears poured down her face. Not silent, not hidden. She cried for every night Rosita had slept afraid, for every morning she'd woken wondering if today was the day they'd be torn apart. She cried for the man who'd kept his distance, who never asked for thanks, who now cradled her daughter like she was something sacred. She laughed through tears, because, somehow, against every odd, they'd survived long enough to feel this. that night. A truth without words. Rosita curled between them beneath the quilt, her breaths soft and even. The house was quiet, filled with candlelight and the faint scent of stew. Bo sat by the window, the bandage on his arm fresh, his body still healing. Lena stood at the door. She didn't knock. She just came in. "She asked to call you Papa," she said. Bo turned. "I heard." Lena nodded. "She's never called anyone that before." He didn't answer, just looked down. But there was no shame in his silence, just awe. "She never even called her real father that," Lena whispered. "He was gone before she learned how." Bo said softly, "Then it means more than I knew." They stood there in the low light. Neither moved, neither spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full. It was waiting. Lena knelt beside his chair, slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "You gave her back something I didn't think she'd ever feel again," she said. "Safety. Joy." Bo looked at her. And then Lena said, even softer, "You gave that to me, too." She reached for his hand, held it. This time, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. Bo lifted her fingers to his lips, kissed them with the kind of reverence most men forgot they were capable of, and neither of them let go. The ring and the reason. Weeks passed. Wounds healed. Scars faded, but didn't disappear. They weren't supposed to. They were proof that something had been broken and then rebuilt. Bo stood at the forge one morning, hands blackened with soot. In his palm, a brass ring, still warm from the fire. He'd made it himself. From the firing pin of the revolver that had saved Lena's life. It was rough, not perfect, but it was honest. He closed his fist around it and walked back to the house. Lena was out front, brushing Rosita's hair. Her dress was plain but clean, fluttering in the wind. The sleeves were uneven, the hem hand-stitched, but she wore it like royalty. Bo walked up, didn't get down on one knee, didn't make a speech, just held out the ring in his calloused palm. "I lost everything," he said. A pause. "But you and Rosita, you gave me something to live for." Lena's eyes filled. She looked at the ring, then at her own wrist, where the scar from the slave rope still faintly showed. Then she looked back at Bo and nodded. Yes, they hadn't planned a wedding. Not really. Bo didn't go into town asking for anything. No preacher, no music, no invitations. But the prairie knew. So did Miss Alberta, the old seamstress from town. She showed up that morning, unannounced, with a bouquet of fresh-cut flowers and 2 dresses tucked under her arm. One for the bride, one for the flower girl. "I heard what you did," she said to Bo, "and I figured no woman who's walked through fire should have to wear ashes to say I do." Bo nodded, said thank you. That was all. Setting the scene. A field dressed in meaning. They chose the east field. Bo had planted it years ago with bluebonnets. Never knowing why. Now he did. Neighbors came. Not many. Just a few. Quiet folk. The sheriff stood at the back, hat in hand, eyes low. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Some things are bigger than law. Some vows are deeper than paper. At the front of the field stood a makeshift altar. 2 crates, draped in a linen sheet, and behind them the Texas sky, wide and endless, Rosita. The joy between them. Rosita led the way, her basket of petals nearly bigger than she was. She skipped down the aisle barefoot, scattering wildflowers like she was sowing hope. Her curls bounced in the wind. Her smile stretched from ear to ear. And as she danced toward the altar, people didn't just smile. They cried. Because there was something holy in that child's joy, and because joy like that doesn't come from nowhere, it's earned. Lena, walking proof of survival. Then came Lena, walking slowly, head high. The dress was simple, white cotton, the hem uneven, stitched by hand, the sleeves a little long, but it fit her perfectly, not because it was flawless, but because she wore it like she owned the sky. Her wrists still bore the faint scars, her collarbone too. She didn't hide them, didn't cover them up. And no one looked away because those scars weren't marks of shame. They were proof of survival, proof of fire walked through. At the altar, two people choosing each other. Bo stood there, cleaned up best he could. A white shirt, collar stiff, hair combed. His boots were dusty, his hands rough. But it was his eyes that were different, soft, alive, lit from within. When Lena reached him, she whispered, "I never thought I'd wear white again." Bo shook his head. "You earned it," the preacher said his words, short, honest. Then Bo and Lena said theirs. No trembling voices, no hesitation. Just two people. Broken once, healing now. Choosing each other. The kiss was simple, sweet, slow. And when they turned to walk back down the path, Rosita ran up, grabbing one of each of their hands. She looked up, grinning. "Now we're all three," she said. Bo looked at Lena. Lena looked back. And with her heart full, eyes brimming, she said, "Yes, mi amor." All three. After the wedding. Quiet rhythms of belonging. The days after the wedding didn't come with trumpets or songs. They came with chores. With burned eggs and mismatched socks. With porch swings and fence repairs and boots left by the door. Lena started her mornings in the kitchen. She burned the eggs twice that first week. Bo ate every bite without a single complaint. Rosita mashed beans like it was her life's mission, proud of every spoonful. Evenings were spent outside. Bo cleaned his rifle. Lena sewed dresses from leftover cloth. Rosita drew pictures. Stick figures holding hands under a big yellow sun. She taped each one above the hearth. One night, by firelight, Lena whispered something in broken English. "We are family now." Bo looked at her. He nodded. "We are, learning each other slowly, one kindness at a time." Bo taught Rosita how to saddle the pony. Lena, slowly but surely, began speaking more. Half English, half Spanish, until the words stuck. She made pozole one Sunday. Bo had never tasted anything like it. He asked for seconds. At church, Lena sat beside him, her sleeves rolled, her scars uncovered, and not a single person dared whisper. Not after what Bo did for her. Not after the wedding and the wildflowers. An old dress and a new memory one day, while cleaning the loft, Lena found something buried in a trunk. A dress. Yellow. Faded. Small. Bo's daughter's. She held it to her chest and cried. That night, she gave it to Rosita. The girl twirled in the fading light, the hem catching in the breeze. Bo watched from the porch, eyes glassy. Lena stepped beside him. "You okay?" she asked. Bo nodded. For the first time in a long while. Yeah, the months passed, and the rhythm of their life, Bo, Lena, and Rosita, settled into something that felt less like survival and more like living. Each morning brought something soft. Lena humming in the kitchen, Bo hauling feed, boots crunching frost, Rosita chasing chickens in a too big hat. But it was the little things that built their world. A fresh pie cooling on the sill, a scarf mended with mismatched thread, a new name spoken over dinner like it had always been there, Papa. A new beginning, nailed into wood. One crisp October morning, Bo brought out his tools. Rosita asked what he was making. A sign, he said. He carved slowly, hands steady, each letter deep and firm. By sundown, he hung it above the front porch. The wood was worn, but the words were new. La Casa de Esperanza, the House of Hope. Lena traced the letters with her fingers, then leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. Gracias, she whispered. Bo didn't answer, just looked out over the field, eyes quiet, full. The fear returns, but doesn't stay, but hope, like wind, always draws in shadows. And fear doesn't ask permission. It just arrives. One night, Rosita woke crying. A nightmare. Her hands flailing. Her voice screaming. They're taking her. They're taking Mama again. Bo rushed in. So did Lena. He pulled Rosita into his arms, rocking her gently, whispering over and over, no one's taken anyone, ever again. Lena held them both. And that night, the three of them slept in the same bed, tangled limbs, heartbeat against heartbeat. No monsters could get in. Not anymore. Sunday at church. A different kind of miracle. Bo had always sat in the back, hat low, shoulders stiff. But now, with Lena on one side and Rosita on the other, something in him shifted. He didn't flinch when people looked, didn't shrink under the whispers. Not this time, because they weren't whispers of judgment anymore. They were of wonder, of respect. When the preacher nodded at them, Bo nodded back, a silent conversation, a kind of benediction. Afterward, a young girl ran up to Rosita. Do you want to play? Rosita's eyes widened. She looked at Bo, then at Lena. Lena smiled. Go ahead, mi amor. Rosita smiled so big it hurt. And Bo? Bo watched like he'd never seen anything more holy. An early frost and a deeper bond. That fall, they rebuilt the barn door, painted it red. They strung dried herbs along the window frames. Bo taught Lena how to shoot. Not because he expected trouble, but because he never wanted her powerless again. And Lena? She started teaching Rosita letters. Together, they wrote their names in chalk across the floor, and beneath them, in the biggest scrawl of all, family, an unexpected visitor. But not the kind you fear. One day, a rider came. A stranger. Bo tensed. He stood tall, hand near the shotgun hidden in the porch post. But the man didn't dismount. Just tipped his hat, handed Bo a small parcel wrapped in cloth, and said, From Miss Alberta. Bo opened it. Inside, a photograph of the three of them. Bo, Lena, and Rosita, standing together at the altar in the wildflower field, taken by a neighbor, developed in secret, gifted without fanfare. Lena held it to her heart. Rosita whispered, Can we hang it? Bo nodded. And that night, they placed it above the hearth, the center of their home. That night, after Rosita had gone to bed, tucked between quilts, Her curls sprawled across the pillow. Lena sat by the window. She didn't speak for a long time, just watched the wind move across the land like ghosts brushing the grass. Bo was at the table, mending a saddle strap. His movements were steady, focused, but he felt her silence like a weight in the air. Then she spoke. "Do you want to know what happened?" Bo didn't look up, but his hands stopped moving. "If you want to tell me," he said, Lena's story. Spoken at last. She drew a deep breath. "It started with a man," she said. "Like most stories do. He said he had work. He promised food, money, a roof." Bo didn't interrupt. Lena's voice was even, but low, like she'd swallowed thunder and only let out the echo. "He was charming, handsome. He spoke Spanish better than I expected." Her hand drifted to her wrist, resting gently on the scar. "We crossed the border at night. Said he'd take us to a farm in San Angelo. We never made it past Laredo." Bo sat quietly. Lena looked out the window again. "They kept us in a barn. Others, too. Women. Girls. Some younger than Rosita." Her jaw clenched. Her fingers gripped the windowsill. "I thought if I was strong, if I obeyed, they wouldn't hurt her. That maybe they'd let her go." A pause. "They didn't." Bo's throat tightened. "I fought. One night, I broke a bottle and tried to get us out. I made it halfway through the fence. They caught me. That's where—" She touched her cheek. "That's when the rope came. The eye. The fever." She turned her head toward him. "And then you." Bo looked up. His voice was low. "You never have to explain." "Not to me." Lena smiled. "But it wasn't bright. It was tired. Honest. I wanted to tell you anyway." Bo's response. Not with words, but with action. He stood, crossed the room, knelt in front of her. Not like a man kneeling to beg, but like someone kneeling in reverence. He reached out and touched a scar on her cheek. Not as something broken, but something sacred. Then he whispered, "They didn't burn you away." Lena blinked. He leaned forward, rested his forehead against hers. And in that quiet moment, they weren't survivor and savior. They were just two people trying to rebuild. Later, dreams and nightmares, and something stronger that night, Lena dreamed of ropes, of dust, of fire. She woke with a start, breath caught in her throat. Bo was already awake, sitting in the chair, still guarding, still watching. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Just a dream." "Tell it to go to hell," Bo said, voice dry. Lena laughed. Then, without a word, she stood, crossed the room, and curled up in the chair beside him. Not because she needed protection, but because, maybe, she wanted to protect him back. The next morning, strength in the small things. Lena didn't cry that morning, didn't stare out the window. She baked bread, real bread, with butter and honey and warmth baked into every bite. Rosita danced in the kitchen, singing something about ponies. Bo walked in, smelled the air, and paused. Lena looked up. "You hungry?" Bo nodded. "Starving." And somehow, that word, starving, didn't mean food. It meant this. The house. The smell. The girl twirling in her dress. The woman smiling from the stove. This is what he'd starved for. This is what he thought he'd never taste again. A drawing on the wall. A silent vow. That afternoon, Rosita taped another drawing above the fireplace. 3 people, holding hands. Below it, in shaky crayon letters, "We are home. Bo stared at it for a long time, then turned to Lena and said, "I think she sees the future better than we do." Lena nodded. She always did. It was late November when the storm hit. Not a thunderstorm, not snow, not even wind. This was the kind of storm that comes on two legs, with lawless grins and rifles that speak before words. Bo saw it first. He was on the ridge checking cattle when he spotted the smoke. Not wildfire. Campfire. Too many for it to be harmless. 6 men, maybe 7. Hard to tell. They were near the southern line of the property. Too close. Too quiet. And Bo knew. They weren't here for trade. They were here for her. The home front prepares. He rode back fast. Kicked up dirt like a bullet trail. By the time he reached the house, Lena was already on the porch. Rosita clutched tight to her leg. She didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. She saw it in his eyes. "How many?" she asked. "Enough," he said. "Too many for comfort." "Do we run?" Bo shook his head. "Not anymore." Lena nodded. She turned to Rosita. "Kitchens. Under the table. Stay quiet. No matter what." Rosita's eyes were wide, but she didn't cry. She just ran. Bo handed Lena a rifle. She cocked it like she'd been doing it her whole life. "I don't want you in front," he said. She didn't answer. Just moved to the side of the porch, barrel steady. Bo stood in the yard, hat low, hands loose, waiting. Confrontation at dusk. The riders came just as the sun dipped below the horizon. 7 of them. Dust on their coats, faces shadowed. The man at the front wasn't Doyle. He was worse. Bigger, meaner. And his eyes held the look of someone who'd already written this story in blood. "We don't want no trouble," the man called out. "Too late," Bo said. "She's ours. Taken property. You had no right." Bo raised the shotgun. "You want to talk about rights? I got 7 acres that say I got all the right I need." The man laughed. "You think you can shoot all of us?" "No," Bo said. "But I can shoot you first." That took the grin off his face. For a moment, just one, the air stopped moving. Then, a shout. One of the riders fired. The bullet cracked the air. Bo fired back. Chaos. Lena screamed Rosita's name. The girl ducked under the kitchen table, hands over her ears. Bo rolled behind the trough, reloaded. Lena fired from the porch. One rider dropped. Another took cover behind the well. Gunshots split the night. Glass shattered. Wood splintered. But Bo and Lena, they didn't fall. They moved like they'd fought together their whole lives. She covered him while he circled wide. He picked off one who tried to flank her. At one point, a rider charged up the porch stairs. Lena slammed the rifle butt into his teeth. He went down like a sack of rock. When the dust settled, 4 men rode off. Fast. Bleeding. Broken. 3 stayed behind. 1 dead. 2 groaning in the dirt. Bo didn't chase. Didn't have to. They wouldn't be back. Not soon. Maybe never. He turned to the porch. Lena was there, her cheek bruised. Lips split. But her hands steady. She lowered the rifle. Bo nodded. She nodded back. No words. Just breath. And survival. The price of protection. Later that night, Lena sat beside Bo on the floor of the kitchen. Rosita was curled against her side, asleep now. Safe. Bo's arm was wrapped, grazed but not deep. Lena's hand shook as she cleaned the blood from his shirt. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm here," she said. That's enough. Bo leaned back. He looked at the damage. The broken glass, the splintered door, then at her, then at Rosita. And for the first time since the shooting stopped, his voice cracked. I couldn't lose you. Lena reached out, cradled his face in her hands. You didn't. The morning after. Ashes and rebirth. They buried the bodies at the edge of the property. Bo dug. Lena said the words, not out of mercy, out of respect for the dead that used to be living, for men who once were boys, maybe raised wrong, maybe broken too young. Rosita laid a flower on one grave, because she said even monsters had mamas once. Bo didn't argue. She was right. A vow in silence that evening, as the fire burned low, Bo sat on the porch with his arm around Lena. Rosita curled between them, dozing. The night was quiet again. The house, though damaged, was still standing, and so were they. Bo looked at the stars, then at her, and whispered, I ain't going nowhere. Lena didn't respond with words. She just leaned her head against his shoulder. That was enough. The storm passed. The house was patched. The porch rebuilt. The windows boarded and then replaced. But what stayed broken didn't belong to the wood or glass. It belonged to silence, the kind that settles after you almost lose everything. But Bo wasn't a man to sit in that silence forever. Neither was Lena. So one night, after supper, when Rosita had fallen asleep by the fire, Bo lit a lantern and hung it in the tree outside. He walked back inside and said, Come out here a minute. Lena gave him a look. You burying something? She asked. He grinned. Not tonight. She stepped out barefoot, arms folded. The Texas wind was soft. The sky a black velvet river. The lantern swung gently, casting golden circles across the dirt. Bo extended a hand. Dance with me. Lena laughed. Now? Now. You don't even have music. Bo cleared his throat and started humming. Off key, low and slow, but with heart. Lena blinked. You're serious. Dead serious. She looked around. Ain't no one here to see me make a fool of myself. Just me, he said. And I'm already a fool for asking. She smiled and took his hand. The dance and the shift. They didn't waltz, didn't spin. They just swayed. Bo's hand on her waist, Lena's cheek against his chest. His hum barely carried in the breeze, but it was music, real music. Not because it was perfect, but because it was theirs. Bo's heart beat steady. Lena's breath came easier. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. Every step across the dirt was a sentence. Every glance, a confession. And then, as the lantern swayed, Bo stopped. Lena looked up. Their eyes met. Not the way they had before. Not with fear. Not with hesitation. But with knowing. And he kissed her. The kiss that changed everything. It wasn't wild or hungry. It wasn't rushed. It was careful, deliberate. Like placing your last match to kindling you've waited your whole life to light. When he pulled back, he whispered, I've wanted to do that since you called this place home. Lena didn't reply. She kissed him again. And this time, she led later. Warmth, not just from the fire. They sat on the porch, the lantern still glowing. Rosita snored softly inside, blanket pulled to her chin. Bo held Lena's hand. She leaned into his side. What are we now? She asked. Bo didn't answer right away. Then, whatever you want us to be. Lena laughed softly. That sounds dangerous. I've lived through worse. An unexpected morning. The next day, Bo was out before dawn, fixing fence posts, as usual. But Lena wasn't in the kitchen. She was outside, wearing his flannel shirt, boots too big for her feet, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You starting without me?" she teased. Bo chuckled. "You ever slept in past 7? Not since Rosita was born." He took the mug. They stood there in silence, not because they were afraid to speak, but because everything had already been said. A gift in the barn that afternoon, Lena asked Bo to show her how to hitch the wagon. Rosita followed, curious. Bo walked them through it, step by step. Then, from the far stall, he brought something out. An old saddle, smaller, light. He brushed off the dust. "I saved this," he said, "from Clara's things." Rosita's eyes widened. "It's yours now," Bo said. Rosita ran her fingers across the worn leather, then threw her arms around his waist. "Thank you, Papa." Bo closed his eyes, held her back, hard. Later, Lena's quiet moment of truth. That evening, Lena stood by the mirror. She touched the scar at her collarbone, touched her lips, then whispered, "Thank you." Not to the mirror, not to the wind, but to herself, for surviving, for trusting, for letting someone in. The mail only came once a month. Usually, it was nothing. Supplies, a paper from town, maybe a notice about cattle tags. But this morning, Bo found something different. A letter. The paper was thin. The ink blurred in spots. The address was written in shaky Spanish. Bo turned it over. No return name. Just a place. Sonora. He didn't open it alone. He brought it inside. Lena was at the stove, flipping biscuits. Rosita sat at the table, humming to herself and coloring her version of a horse with wings. Bo placed the letter on the table. Lena turned. Her smile faded the second she saw it. She wiped her hands, dried them twice, then sat. She didn't touch it at first. She just stared at her name, scrawled across the front. Finally, she said, "I only have one thing in Sonora." Bo stayed quiet. Lena tore it open. The letter. And the shock it carried. "Lena, if you're alive, I pray this reaches you. I heard from a merchant that a woman matching your name and description was seen near Laredo. Bought, then disappeared. I've been searching ever since. I'm still here, still at the farm. They didn't get me, but I lost everyone else. If Rosita's with you, tell her Uncle Mateo never stopped looking. I have nothing but memories and the soil under my nails. But if you want to come home, it's here. It's always been." Silence followed. Lena didn't cry, didn't speak for several seconds. Just held the letter in both hands, eyes distant. Bo watched her, waited. When she finally looked at him, her voice was thick. "He's alive." "Your brother?" She nodded. I watched them drag him. He fought them." Bo didn't say anything, just stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You want to go?" he asked. "I don't know." The past never stays buried. For the next few days, Lena was different. Not cold, not distant, just adrift. She stared at the fire more. Her hands folded clothes that didn't need folding. She scrubbed pots already clean. Rosita noticed. "Is Mama mad?" she asked Bo. "No, sweetheart," he said. "She's remembering." A conversation by starlight one night. Lena and Bo sat on the porch. wrapped in one blanket. She held the letter. Bo sipped whiskey. "I don't know what I'd even say to him," she whispered. "I don't remember who I was before. Maybe he needs to see who you are now." She looked at him. "I'm scared." "I know. What if going back means letting go?" Bo turned toward her. "Then let it go. Doesn't mean you leave it behind. Just means it's not holding you anymore." The decision. The next morning, Lena woke early. She braided Rosita's hair, pressed the letter flat, packed a small bag. Then she looked Bo in the eye and said, "I want to go." He nodded. "I'll get the wagon." She reached for his hand. "No, I want to go alone. Just me and Rosita." Bo's jaw clenched. But he nodded again, because trust isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting someone go without fear, saying goodbye for now. When the wagon rolled out, Bo stood by the fence. Rosita waved so hard her whole body moved. Bo smiled, lifted his hand. He didn't chase, didn't follow, just stood there until the dust settled, until the road was empty again. Then he turned and got back to work. 3 days later, a surprise on the horizon, Bo was hammering in a fence post when he saw them, the wagon, coming back fast. Rosita stood in the front, waving again. Lena beside her, eyes red, but smiling. When they pulled up, Bo didn't ask anything. She stepped down, walked straight to him, and said, "He's alive, but he's not home." Bo frowned. "He's broken, Bo, all alone. And he said he was proud. He said I was stronger than he ever knew." She paused. I needed to hear that. But I needed to come back more. Bo didn't speak, didn't need to. He just reached for her hand and held it. After Lena returned, things felt different. Not wrong, just closer. She wasn't holding back anymore. And Bo, he wasn't running either. He'd gone quiet in a way that didn't feel like distance, but like gathering. Lena noticed it. One night, after Rosita had gone to bed, she asked, "What is it you're not saying?" Bo stirred the fire, didn't look at her. But he said, "I haven't told you everything. The story of Clara, Bo's daughter." He sat down, elbows on his knees, staring into the flames like they were windows to the past. "I told you Clara died from fever." Lena nodded. "You did." I lied. A truth too heavy to carry alone. "She was sick." "Yes," Bo said. "Burning up. Delirious. But I could have made it to town." Lena stayed silent. "But I didn't." "Why?" she asked gently. He exhaled, like it hurt to let the air go. "Because I was angry. At God. At the land. At the war that took my brothers. At myself. I was so damn bitter, I stopped fighting." He turned his eyes to hers. "I didn't get her the medicine. I didn't ride. I sat on that porch and waited for her to die. And she did." Lena reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "There's more." The wife who followed grief too far. "June, my wife, she never blamed me. Not once. But she wasn't whole after. And a month later, she walked into the river. Didn't come back." Silence. The kind that rings louder than gunfire. Bo's jaw clenched. "I found her shoes on the bank." Lena didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She just stood, crossed the space between them, and knelt, right in front of him. "Bo Ryland," she whispered, "look at me." He did. Barely. "You didn't kill her." He tried to look away. She held his chin. You hurt. You broke. But you didn't stop being a man worth saving. His voice cracked. I failed them. No, Lena said. You carried them. For too long. Now you let them go. Forgiveness without permission. He shook his head. I don't deserve. You don't have to deserve it, she interrupted. You lived. That's enough. Beau's eyes finally filled. Not fast, but steady. He didn't sob, didn't shake, but a single tear slid down his weathered cheek, and Lena leaned forward and kissed it, like an answer, like an oath. Later, a grave and a promise. The next morning, Beau took them to the tree line at the edge of the ranch. 2 small markers stood there. One said Clara, the other June. He brought flowers, not wild ones, the ones Lena had planted by the porch. He set them down, knees creaking. Rosita stood between them. Is that your first family? She asked. Beau nodded. They're part of us now? Beau looked at Lena. Lena smiled. Yes, baby, she said. They are. Rosita nodded and placed a drawing between the headstones. 3 hearts, 1 big, 2 smaller. Below it, all of us, that night. Something breaks free. They returned home as the sun dipped low. Beau didn't speak much, but his shoulders were lighter, his eyes clearer. Lena cooked a stew that smelled like roots and rosemary. Rosita fell asleep with her head in Beau's lap. And Beau? He looked at Lena and said, I never told anyone that story. You didn't have to, she said, but I needed to. She nodded, then whispered, and now you never have to carry it alone again. It was a Thursday when the knock came. Not a bang, not a threat, just 3 soft knocks on the front door. Beau was at the barn. Lena was in the kitchen, kneading dough. Rosita was chasing the cat under the table. Lena froze, wiped her hands on a towel, peeked out the window. A man, middle-aged, clean coat, sun-dark skin, leather satchel across his back. Didn't look dangerous. Didn't look familiar. Beau approached from behind, shotgun loose at his side, not raised, but not forgotten. Lena opened the door halfway. The man tipped his hat. You Mrs. Alvarez? Lena blinked. I was. Name's Henry Clay, he said. I work for a railway survey crew up near Del Rio. I'm not here to sell you anything. Beau stepped beside her. Then why are you here? Henry smiled, pulled a folded paper from his satchel. A while back, a little girl asked one of our men to mail a letter for her. No stamp, just scribbles. But something about her stuck. He held out the page. Lena took it. Beau looked over her shoulder. Crayon, in purple and red. My name is Rosita. My mama is sick, but she is kind. If you see this, please find us. Lena gasped. Beau's jaw clenched. I found her, Henry said. And I couldn't forget her. I asked around. A woman at the Laredo market said someone bought a mother and daughter and vanished. Then I heard about a man outside San Felipe who paid gold and never came back. He smiled. It took me a while, but I followed the trail. A stranger brings more than questions. Lena stepped aside, let him in. Beau still stood near the door, eyes cautious. Rosita peeked out from the hallway. When she saw the letter, her eyes widened. You found it? Henry chuckled. I did. Are you here to take us away? Henry looked at Beau, then at Lena. No, honey. I'm here to make sure no one else does. A promise made on the porch. That evening, The three of them sat on the porch. Rosita asleep inside again. Henry leaned back in a chair, sipping coffee. "I've seen a lot out here," he said. "Rail towns that come and go, lawmen who don't give a damn, men who break women for profit." He looked at Bo. "But I ain't never seen what I saw here. A man buy back what the world tried to throw away." Bo said nothing. Henry continued, "I work with a group, quiet folk. We help people like y'all disappear better, make new names stick, help papers go missing." Lena leaned forward. "You mean protect us?" Henry nodded. "I mean help you stay free. For good." Bo's reply, simple, firm, final. Bo didn't blink, didn't hesitate. "You help us. We'll help others." Henry grinned. "That's all I wanted to hear." A shift in purpose. From that day on, things changed. Bo built a second cabin near the creek bed. Lena cleaned it, stocked it. Rosita called it the safe house. And every few weeks, someone new came. A woman with a swollen eye and a newborn. A boy who hadn't spoken in months. A mother who couldn't remember the last time someone called her by her real name. They stayed. Some for a night. Some for longer. All left better than they came. The home grows fuller, but never crowded. The house was no longer quiet. It was full of voices. Bo added another place at the table. Lena taught more women how to cook over fire, how to stitch wounds, how to shoot. Bo never asked questions. He just made space, fixed roofs, patched boots, cut firewood until his hands bled, and at night, when the stars came out, he'd hold Lena's hand and say, "I never knew I could be part of something good." And Lena would whisper, "You are something good." Rosita's words. Simple, perfect. One night, a girl no older than Rosita sat curled on the floor. Scared, silent. Rosita walked up to her and said, "You don't have to cry anymore. This house is like a fence. Bad things can't get through." The girl looked at her. "Promise?" Rosita nodded. "I pinky promise." And in that moment, the house wasn't just home. It was shelter. That winter came fast and harsh. Frost cracked the porch steps. The creek froze shallow. The sky hung low, heavy with a silence that swallowed sound. But inside Bo and Lena's ranch, the light never went out. There was soup on the stove. There were boots drying by the fire. There were voices, some laughing, some whispering, some too broken to speak. But they were safe, and word began to spread. The legend grows. Whispers and wind. They called it La Casa de Esperanza. They whispered of a man who rode alone but gave everything, a woman who bore her scars like armor and taught others to do the same. A girl who had once been silent, now helping others find their voice. From Del Rio to San Angelo, people talked of a safe place past the cottonwoods, where a man with a shotgun and a bad leg didn't just protect the land, but protected the lost. The gift of fire and food. By mid-December, strangers stopped asking to stay. They just arrived. And Lena welcomed them all. She made stew from bones and beans. She taught young girls how to wrap cloth and whisper lullabies. Rosita shared her dolls, her books, her crayons, and insisted they weren't guests. They were sisters. Bo dug trenches for drainage, built bunks from split pine. He didn't speak much, but his hands did the talking, and no one questioned him. Not when they saw the way he stood in front of every woman and child when danger brushed close. Not when they saw how he never touched anyone without being asked. The sheriff comes riding. It was just after New Year's when Sheriff McConnell arrived. He rode up slow, hand resting on the butt of his pistol, eyes hard. Bo met him at the gate. They didn't shake hands. They didn't smile. "I heard what you're doing here," the sheriff said. Bo didn't flinch. "Is that so?" McConnell nodded. "Got some folks whispering. Say you're hiding the fugitives, harboring thieves." Bo's jaw clenched. "They're not fugitives. They're survivors." McConnell narrowed his eyes. "You breaking the law, Ryland?" Bo looked him square. "If the law's protecting the men who sold these women like cattle, then yeah. I'm breaking it." The sheriff said nothing for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out a small leather pouch, tossed it to Bo. "Gold?" Bo asked. McConnell tipped his hat. "For nails, for roof patches, for whatever keeps that fire going." And with that, he rode off. A night of candles and songs. That night, they lit candles. Lena led a prayer in Spanish. Bo stood beside her, silent, hat in hand. Rosita played a lullaby on a harmonica that someone had left behind. And every soul in that house, every scarred, tired, healing soul, sang, not like angels, not in perfect harmony, but in truth, in gratitude, in defiance of every man who'd ever tried to silence them. A visit from Henry Clay. Henry returned a week later, brought news. "The governor's office heard about you," he said, "but no one's moving. Too risky, too public." He smiled. "You've become a story, Bo. You and Lena. The girl who asked to be saved. The man who said yes." Bo looked out the window, watched Rosita chase a snowflake. "We didn't ask for that," he said. Henry nodded. "The best stories never do. The frost doesn't win. The cold deepened, but the fire never died. They rationed what they had. They grew tougher, tighter. And when spring whispered from the edge of the hills, no one had frozen, no one had left behind, no one had been taken. What was once survival, now a movement by March. The ranch wasn't just a safe house. It was a refuge, a sanctuary, a name passed in secret across borderlines, a candle that stayed lit when all others went out. Bo and Lena never called themselves heroes. They just called themselves lucky. Because even in a land that tried to break them, they had found something more powerful than vengeance or gold. They'd found family. Rosita was looking for crayons. She had a new idea for a drawing, one with wings and stars, and maybe a giant pig that could fly. She climbed up the old attic ladder barefoot, her curls bouncing, her voice humming. Boxes creaked under her hands. Dust danced in the sun. And then she found it, a small wooden box, tucked under a wool blanket. Inside, wrapped in a scarf, was a Bible. She opened it, and out slid a letter, yellowed, folded, fragile, but still sealed, and written across the front in faded ink. "To the one who brings her home," Rosita's discovery. A doorway to the past. Rosita brought it down like it was treasure. "Mama," she called. Lena looked up from the table where she was stitching a blanket. Bo looked up too, brow furrowed. Rosita held it out. Lena took the letter, read the front. Her breath caught. Then, slowly, carefully, she peeled it open. The letter from June. Bo's wife. "If you're reading this, then Bo found you. He brought you here. He opened that part of him I couldn't reach after Clara. This house was built with love, but also with pain. I leave this letter not to haunt him, but to free him. If you can love him, truly love him, then you are what I couldn't be after our loss. His reason to keep going. Tell him I forgive him. Tell him he was always a good man. And tell the little girl who brought this to you that she is part of our story now. Part of what makes this house a home again, with love and no regret." "June." The moment that broke and healed, Lena didn't speak. She handed the letter to Bo. His fingers shook as he read. When he was done, he didn't say a word. He just stared at the paper, lips pressed tight. Then he folded it, pressed it to his heart, and looked at Rosita. "She brought it to us," Lena said. "She found it." Bo opened his arms. Rosita climbed into them without hesitation. Later, at the graves. That evening, they returned to the ridge. Lena carried flowers. Bo carried the letter. Rosita carried the Bible. They stood in front of the two markers again. Clara and June? Bo knelt, placed the letter in a tin box, and buried it beside the stone. Lena laid the flowers. Rosita opened the Bible to the blank page in the back, and in crayon she wrote, "We remember you. We are part of you. And we love him too." The circle completes on the way home. Bo held Lena's hand the entire walk. No words. Just touch. Just presence. Just a man finally whole. And a woman who helped him find that piece of himself that grief had buried. And a girl who reminded them both why it mattered to keep trying. That night, the question returned. Rosita curled in bed between them, eyes already drifting closed. She whispered, "Can I still call you Papa?" Bo kissed her forehead. "Always." Then she asked, "What would Clara think of me?" Bo looked at the ceiling, then at Lena, and said, "She'd think you saved me." Lena reached for his hand and whispered, "She'd be right." Bo sat in his rocking chair. The wood creaked under his weight. A cup of coffee in one hand. The other rested gently on Lena's knee. She sat beside him, legs tucked under her, a book in her lap, untouched. They weren't reading. They were just watching. Rosita was chasing a chicken across the yard, laughing so hard she fell into the grass. The wind carried her joy all the way to the porch. Bo smiled. So did Lena. And for the first time in years, there was no more waiting for the other shoe to drop. The house that healed. It still bore scars. The bullet hole above the door. The repaired window with one pane always fogging. The floorboard in the kitchen that groaned a little louder than the others. But none of it was broken. Not anymore. Because healing doesn't mean perfect. It just means stronger where it cracked. Visitors still came, not every day, not every week, but often enough that Bo kept the barn stocked with extra blankets. Lena kept dried herbs in jars along the wall. Rosita kept adding drawings above the hearth. A new one every month. Their family grew. In stories, in souls, in the kind of memories you never take a picture of, but never forget. A name known quietly across counties. They never called it an orphanage, or a refuge, or a sanctuary. But that's what it was. La Casa de Esperanza. a house of hope, where no one was turned away, where scars were seen, not hidden, where survival didn't have to look like silence, and where love wasn't owed. It was given. Beau's final promise. One evening, as the sun kissed the hilltops goodbye, Rosita climbed into Beau's lap. She was older now, maybe 10. Her curls longer, her eyes wiser. She pointed to the horizon. "What happens when you're not here anymore?" she asked. Beau blinked, looked out, then down at her. "Then this house keeps standing." "How?" He pointed to her heart. "Because you'll remember why we built it." Rosita nodded slowly, then looked at Lena. "Will you stay too?" Lena smiled. "I'm not going anywhere." Rosita nestled against them both, and the porch rocked slow, back and forth, back and forth. Final image. The drawing that stayed forever, years later, after many came and went. One drawing never moved, hung above the hearth, faded now, but untouched. 3 figures, hand in hand. One tall, one in the middle, one smiling with curls. Above their heads, drawn in red crayon, home. If this story moved you, stayed with you, or reminded you that hope still grows in the hardest dirt, then you're part of this story too. At Wild West Love Stories, we believe in broken things becoming beautiful, in quiet heroes, in family that chooses each other. Subscribe for more tales like this. Comment your favorite moment. Share with someone who needs to believe in good again. Because out here, love still rides, even in the dust. Even in the dark, it rides, and it stays